He may be the greatest golfer who ever lived. But Jack Nicklaus was much more than that. A class act as a person, and with a natural grace to embellish his monumental achievement of 18 major championships. The same grace under pressure touched Tom Watson, a gentleman of golf who won 5 British Open championships to write himself into the annals of the game. Annika Sorenstam of Sweden won so often on the women's circuit that momentarily she chose to test herself against the men. They are dominant figures in the history of their ancient sport. This is the Immortals.
So in the immortal words of a CBS golf announcer, Vern Lundquist, yes, sir, the Congressional Gold Medal goes to the gentleman from Ohio, the Golden Bear, Jack Nicklaus.
World champion Jack Nicklaus at the Lake.
They called him the Golden Bear, and he wreaked havoc on the world of professional golf from the 1960s until one famous afternoon at Augusta National in 1986.
An eagle 3 gives him a 64, breaking the previous course record by 2.
Professional golf is played in all corners of the globe, in almost every week of the year. But it is the 4 majors that are the measuring sticks for players. The Masters at the fabled Augusta National in Georgia, the US Open, the Open Championship on the links of Britain, and the US PGA Championship carry with them a mystique and a history. They are the ones that the players crave more than any other. Jack Nicklaus, a man from Columbus, Ohio, who had emerged to win 2 US amateur titles before turning pro, was no different. Except that he found a way to win 18 of them. A feat unrivaled before or since, and even out of the reach of the great Tiger Woods, so it seems. It all began in 1962 at the US Open at Oakmont, where he beat Arnold Palmer by 3 shots in an 18-hole playoff, one of the early chapters of their long and wonderful rivalry.
Arnold Palmer helps him on with the Masters jacket. You can see it fits he to a T.
Nicklaus found himself on the cover of Time magazine. He was just 22. He won the Masters for the first time in 1963, and by 1966 had the full set of 4 majors after his triumph in the Open Championship at St Andrews. Nicklaus bombed the ball long, hit it left to right by preference, and knew how to win. Loved to close the door on a rival. He was not the most popular player out on tour. That honor would be reserved for the charismatic Palmer with his famous Arnie's Army. But he was the best. Although through the years he had significant challenges. From Palmer to begin with, from Gary Player, the great South African, and from Tom Watson, his fellow American. From 1962 to 1980, Nicklaus won 17 majors, contended in many others, overtook the record of 11 of the modern majors held by Walter Hagen, and set a new benchmark for the game. He had 5 Masters, 3 Open Championships, 4 US Opens, and 5 US PGAs to show for a magnificent career. Married to Barbara, he fathered 5 children, and they began the Nicklaus Children's Health Foundation together, which became a passion. The Bear once said, famously, "I don't mind dying penniless, but just not right now." Nicklaus's feats and character were recognized in 2014 when he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal by the U.S. Congress, a distinguished award given to military leaders, public servants, athletes, and artists.
I'm honestly and completely humbled to be here today, and I guess you'd say I'm floored to be standing here. And when you look at the past recipients of the Congressional Gold Medal, it reads like chapters from a history book. George Washington, Ulysses S. Grant, the Wright brothers, Dr. Jonas Salk, General Douglas MacArthur, Sir Winston Churchill, Walt Disney, and so many more.
Still to come on the Immortals, the moment that signified Jack Nicklaus's greatness as a man. Great Britain's Tony Jacklin and Jack Nicklaus were all square in a titanic match on the final day of the Ryder Cup teams event at Royal Birkdale in England in 1969. What happened when they reached the 18th and final hole is oft quoted as the mark of Jack Nicklaus. The Bear had a tricky putt of almost 2 meters to par the final hole, which he duly managed. Jacklin was left with a knee knocker, just under a meter for his own par to halve the match and complete the first ever Ryder Cup tie. But he never had the chance to make the putt, or to miss it. Picking his own golf ball from the hole, Nicklaus plucked Jacklin's marker from the putting surface and shook his hand. He had conceded the putt to the Englishman, leaving the match all square and the teams tied. An act of generosity after what had previously been an ill-tempered contest. Great Britain and the USA tied on 16 points each after 3 days and 32 matches, with the USA retaining the prestigious Ryder Cup because it had won the previous encounter at home 2 years earlier.
And like the great player he is, he knocked his putt in. And prior to picking his ball out of the hole, he picked my marker up, and then picked his ball up, and he handed me the ball, conceding the putt, saying, "I don't believe you'd have missed that, but I would never give the opportunity in these circumstances," which was unbelievable. And, you know, tie, first tie in Ryder Cup history, and a gesture that was just unparalleled, you know, in our game. Because, I mean, the American team, captained by Sam Snead, there were a lot of old, a lot of mean-spiritedness in there, you know, mixed in with. They were all tough guys, these, brought up the hard way in the 40s and 50s. And, you know, and you don't do things like that, you know, when it comes to Ryder Cup.
Nicklaus's teammates thought it overly generous, and the USA captain, Sam Snead, called it ridiculous. We went over there to win, not to be good old boys. But in time, it came to be regarded as one of the greatest acts of sportsmanship in all of sport, and it summed up Jack Nicklaus. Nicklaus won his 17th major in 1980, but 6 years on, his tally remained at 17, and he had reached 46 years of age. The game was immensely popular, and new superheroes had emerged. Nick Faldo, the grinding Englishman. Greg Norman, the swaggering Australian. And Spain's Seve Ballesteros. Little did anyone know that the Golden Bear had another shot in the locker. At the Masters at Augusta National in April 1986, Nicklaus closed with a final round of 7 under par 65 to put himself into the mix for a 6th green jacket. Signing at 9 under par overall, he waited for Norman, the joint leader, to finish a few groups behind. but Norman bogeyed the 18th to lose. The famous green jacket for Masters winners belonged to Nicklaus, his 6th. At 46, he was the oldest ever Masters champion, a shot ahead of Norman and Tom Kite, and a further shot ahead of Ballesteros. It goes down as one of the most famous Masters tournaments ever. Arguably the greatest name in the sport, coming back to his best for one breathtaking afternoon. Maybe I should say goodbye. Maybe that'd be the smart thing to do. But I'm not that smart. Nicklaus's career wound down from that point, and he focused on his business interests, in particular his golf architecture, building courses around the world, including his signature piece, Muirfield Village, in his native Ohio. He played his last Masters and Open Championships in 2005, the latter quite appropriately at the home of the game, St Andrews in Scotland. A cluster of young men have tried to chase down his records and feats, from Tiger Woods to Rory McIlroy to Jordan Spieth and Jason Day. Woods roared to 14 majors at age 32 when he won the 2008 US Open at Torrey Pines on a wobbly knee and with a fracture in his leg. But to the end of 2016, he had not added to his tally, and a back injury and various off-course controversies had seen his star fall. As for Nicklaus, he sat back and watched them all try to catch him. His 18 majors clearly ahead of Woods on 14, with Walter Hagen's 11 next on the list. Jordan Spieth's breakthrough majors win at the 2015 Masters, as well as Rory McIlroy's 4 majors to the end of 2014, opened up speculation that the Bears' high water mark could be in danger, a notion that the man himself acknowledges.
I don't know, I mean, Jordan has only won 1 major. I mean, in his advanced career at age 21. But if you look at that, he's had 25 top 10s he's had at age 21. I mean, that's phenomenal. Rory's what, 4 already? I mean, Rory McIlroy's got a lot of major championships in him. I mean, right now, if I would have to say, I'd say that, I still think Tiger's got a good shot at breaking my record, but I would say Rory's got a really good shot.
The Golden Bear remains at the pinnacle as golf's most immortal figure. Up next on the Immortals, another of golf's gentleman superstars. Tom Watson had a beautiful, effortless golf swing and a sunny personality to match. He was also a competitor, a fact that shone out through more than 30 years at the top of golf. Watson's 8 major championships puts him 6th on the all-time list behind Jack Nicklaus. His 5 Open Championships, 1975, 1977, 1980, 1982, and 1983, is second only to Harry Vardon, with 6 in the world's oldest and most prestigious golf tournament. Peter Thompson of Australia, James Braid of Scotland, and J.H. Taylor of England are the other men to have won 5. Despite coming out of Kansas City and the lush green courses of the USA, Watson thrived in the links of England and Scotland, where the ball is played along the ground rather than in the air, and where the winds are treacherous. Watson's love affair with the British links kicked in early. He won the Open Championship in 1975 at his first start in the storied tournament, beating Australia's Jack Newton in a dramatic 18-hole playoff when Newton missed a par putt at the last.
Well, I wasn't too happy out there. I was determined. I was determined to play at the best of my ability.
Very calm, too.
And not, well, you didn't see me on the inside. I tell you, the last 3 holes when we were tied, or last 2 holes when we were tied, it was churning inside. I mean, the butterflies are huge.
Did you think earlier in the week that you could do it?
I felt that I had a chance, yes.
It launched his career, and in 1977 at Turnberry, he would be a lead actor in one of golf's greatest plays, the so-called Duel in the Sun, with none other than Jack Nicklaus as the other protagonist.
Back in '75, I was just trying to learn how to play this game for a living and compete successfully. And I had a fortunate week at St. Andrews, not a lot of wind, of course, not a lot of rough, and I prevailed in a playoff and with some wind. And that began my Open odyssey, you might say. The 77 Open at Turnberry was the place where I really felt that I belonged out here on the professional tour. I felt that I could play against the best and beat the best.
Watson, at the time the defending Masters champion, and Nicklaus, the reigning Open champion, cleared out from the field, both shooting 65 on the Saturday, then trading blows on the final day when the crowd stormed the fairways, at one point holding up play for 15 minutes. Watson shot 65, finishing it with an 8-iron shot close at the last for a tap-in birdie. Nicklaus carded a 66, 10 shots ahead of the next best player. Tom Watson went on to win the Masters twice, in 1977 and 1981, and the US Open in 1982. He won his last big tour event in 1998, but turned to the Seniors Tour and dominated for a few more years, winning 6 senior majors. Like Nicklaus, he had one final hurrah, and appropriately, it came at Turnberry in the Open Championship of 2009, when at 59 years of age, Watson went within a fickle bounce of winning the title again and creating history. Julius Boros, at 48 years, held the record as the oldest winner of a men's major, just ahead of Nicklaus, who had won the Masters at 46. Watson led by a shot into the final round and needed a par at the 72nd and final hole to win. Alas, his 8-iron to the last green, purely hit, bounced hard and ran off the back of the green. And from there, he could only make bogey, so that he was forced into a playoff with his compatriot Stuart Sink. Sink won the playoff, and Watson was left to deliver his verse on perspective as he entered the media tent. Nobody died, fellas. It's still just a golf tournament. Watson regretted those moments, but not in the context of his whole career, which is remarkable. Boasting 39 wins on the PGA Tour, 6 Player of the Year awards, another 14 wins worldwide, and a place in the World Golf Hall of Fame. Like Nicklaus, he chose to play his final Open Championship at St. Andrews in 2015.
Well, it has defined my career, I have to say. And there is a certain sense of melancholy. You can sense that. The regret that it's over. I said it a month ago, it's a little bit like death. The finality of the end is here. But what tempers that very much are the memories and the people I've met along the way. There are just a lot of good memories about all this. And but it's time. It's time.
Tom Watson was all class to the very end. The relationship between player and caddy is something unique to golf. and Tom Watson had the best of it. Watson worked with Bruce Edwards on his bag for 30 years, broken only by a stint with Greg Norman, until Edwards fell ill with Lou Gehrig's disease in 2003. They had a remarkable friendship. Edwards had a habit of packing an egg sandwich for Watson to eat on the secluded 13th tee at Augusta National during the Masters each year. And after he died, age 49 in 2004, Watson continued the tradition. Each year, he would have his new caddy pack an egg sandwich for the first round of the Masters. And Watson would leave the sandwich on the seat beside the tee. It is typical of Watson that he never underplayed or forgot the contribution made by his caddy. That's part of the tradition, my Masters tradition. He loved the Masters. This is his favorite tournament. When we return, the coolest of Swedes, Annika Sorenstam. Women's golf has made huge strides into the sporting landscape in the past 30 years, and one woman above all was responsible. Annika Sorenstam of Sweden put women's golf on the sporting map. Such was her greatness. Sorenstam had two careers in a sense. The early years from 1995, when she was an upstart and a superstar. And then the second, coming around a decade later, when she was simply unstoppable. Sorenstam won 72 times on the LPGA Tour, the world's richest, toughest, and best for women. 8 times in 2001, a monumental 11 times in 2002. Her final tally of 10 major championship wins falls a little behind the record of 15 held by Patricia Berg of the US in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. But when you factor in the growth of the women's game in the modern era, the Swedish woman sits comfortably with Berg, Mickey Wright, Babe Zacharias, and Kari Webb among the greatest female players ever. Quite arguably, she is the best of all, and nobody can match her 8 wins as LPGA Tour Player of the Year. At the end of 2002, her dominance was so complete that she was invited to play on the men's circuit in the US PGA Tour's Bank of America Colonial event in Texas. It was May 2003, and Sorenstam agreed, despite some trenchant criticism from male professionals uncomfortable with this incursion on their territory.
There are guys out there trying to make a living, so, you know, and it's not a ladies tour. If she wants to play, I mean, she's mostly, you know, she should, or any woman for that matter, if they want to play the men's tour, they should qualify and play like everybody else, so.
Sorenstam tried to ignore the media storm and play, with mixed results, narrowly missing the cut line. She shot 71 in the first round, then 74 on the second day, finishing 96th, and beating 11 of the men, although in truth, this was not the point.
I have tested myself in so many ways, and you know, I've learned so much, and you know, I'm thankful for that.
From that week, she went back to the LPGA and rampaged through the next 5 years, winning almost 30 more tournaments and 6 extra majors. She was not the first or last to compete with the men. Zacharias had done it many years before, and Michelle Wie since. But for Sorenstam, there is one feat that remains unmatched. On March 16, 2001, she shot 59, becoming the first ever woman to break 60 in an LPGA Tour event or on any big tour, playing in the second round of the Standard Register Ping Tournament in Phoenix. She birdied her first 8 holes, Then after a par at her 9th hole, she reeled off another 4 birdies in a row. By the time she 2-putted for birdie at her 17th hole, she was in position to break 60 and beat the previous LPGA record of 61. A par at the last was all she needed as she leapt into the arms of her caddy. I made such an incredible start, and it was such fun. She had just 25 putts, rolling in an incredible 13 birdies in her record 59. Annika Sorenstam. Just call her an immortal.